And welcome everybody to the Life and Legacy Show, sponsored by the Sechler Law Firm, where great families make great estate plan. My name is Tim Sechler. I am the owner of the Sechler Law Firm. We are one of the area's biggest estate and elder law firms. We're up in Cranberry Township, where we help families get the right plan for their family, for their finances. We do lots of wills and trusts and powers of attorney. And one of the things that we do and do a lot of is what has become known as elder law work, right? And in elder law work, which is a subset of estate planning, right? It's just a different philosophy when it comes to estate planning, and that philosophy is generally rooted in the idea that estate planning, generally speaking, is about who gets the stuff when I pass away, who's in control if I'm incapacitated, in intense tax strategies. But elder law wrestles with the reality that those aren't the only financial institutions we got to wrestle with. We also have to wrestle with how am I going to receive my long-term care if I need it, and how am I going to pay for it, right? Because a lot of us are going to need long-term care. And if a lot of us are going to need long-term care and Medicare when I'm older doesn't pay for long-term care, well, then how are we going to pay for long-term care? And so elder law attorneys and what we do a lot of in our practice is we help families sort of chart out their care goals. We help, we have a social worker on our staff that helps with placements or help finding care for in the home. But unfortunately, the way that our government rule book is set up is that you cannot just make care decision based on the care needs. You have to make care decisions through the lens of how are we going to afford it, because they've made this stupid system so darn complicated that families make mistakes and families go broken. And my goal, the entire reason I started my law firm, was to help middle class families not have to go through that. And so this radio show, if you are new to it, is to help people understand these rules and help you make a good plan for your family, because everybody wants to do the same thing. It's kind of like this. I've got some stuff, right? I've worked my entire career to accumulate this stuff, and it wasn't easy. And I had personal things, and I raised kids, or I didn't raise kids, or I supported a nonprofit, or my place of worship, or I didn't do that. And I've lived this life, and at the end, toward the end, my retirement years, I've got some stuff, and all I want is for my stuff to get to my people, right? And I don't want it to be subject to too much taxation. I don't want to lose it to Alzheimer's disease. I would prefer not to cause a whole bunch of headache in the court system. So, because at the end of the day, I just want my stuff to get to my people, and that's a simple goal. But unfortunately, they have made this thing so darn complicated to accomplish that goal that we need to add some tools to it. So, like, there's this nonsense that exists in the world that says, look, if you're not rich, all you need is a simple will. And a lot of families have been fed the line that all you need is a will, right? You need a will and a power of attorney. You could go to 1,000 seminars where they talk about the three key documents, right? The power of attorney, the healthcare directive, and the will. And 95% of middle-class people, they've got a will and a power of attorney, right? But here's the problem. 1 in 3 of us are going to have dementia. If you reach age 80, 1 in 3 of us are going to have dementia. 2 out of 3 of us will need some form of long-term care, and 20% of us will need that care for more than 5 years. And nursing homes are 150 grand a year, right? So this stuff isn't fun to think about, but let's deal with the reality of this, right? Let's say that I could use a nursing home for 2 years. Well, that's $300,000. What other area of my life do I have a potential risk of $300,000? A house fire maybe, but with a house fire, I have insurance. It's hard to imagine an area where 300 grand evaporates without me planning for it or making some risky investment or something. But these guys, the system just takes the money, right? And I think that that's where the system is broken. And I advocate on behalf of my clients to protect their stuff. If that makes sense to you, then you're going to like what we have to say and probably learn a lot on today's radio show. So what we're going to talk about today is the misconceptions, the understanding, the explanation of the 5-year clock, the 5-year look back period as it has become known, right? So let me do some context, and we're going to talk about how we can understand the 5-year clock and how planning opportunities exist to defeat the 5-year clock. Okay, so here's what it is. The general context is if I need long-term care and I'm a senior, I'm on Medicare benefits, but Medicare doesn't pay for long-term care, right? At the end of the day, the politicians can say what they want to say. They're never going to fix it. in Medicare should be paying for long-term care. Medicare pays for a senior's heart attack. Why doesn't Medicare pay for a senior's dementia, right? It doesn't make sense, but it's what it is. So Medicare is not going to pay, which means a lot of families have to look at Medicaid, but Medicaid looks at your money before they determine if you're eligible, right? Because Medicaid, when it was designed 60, 70 years ago, was supposed to be safety net for the impoverished. It wasn't supposed to be America's long-term care plan, but that's what it became because there's no other plan. And so people go broke, and now Medicaid pays nursing homes. Now, Medicaid doesn't pay nursing homes enough. If you read the stuff in the Post-Gazette recently, Medicaid, nursing homes are in real financial straits because Medicaid simply doesn't pay them enough for them to cover the costs, right? And so we got this situation where nursing home owners are raising red flags and screaming from the mountaintops, you need to pay us more or there won't be any nursing homes. But the government just won't pay them any nursing anymore, right? And so that's one issue. That's not really the subject of today's show. We did that a couple weeks back. You can go listen to it. The topic of today's show is this 5-year clock. Okay, so Medicaid looks at your money, and Medicaid then can't let you give your stuff away on Tuesday and ask for eligibility on Thursday, right? Because then everybody would just be on Medicaid, and that's not how the thing works. So they don't let you transfer stuff 2 days before you need Medicaid benefits. They don't let you transfer stuff 30 days. They don't let you transfer stuff for 5 years. So if you ever find yourself in the position where a loved one is in a nursing home and you're talking to them and you got too much money for Medicaid and well, can I just give it to my kids? Well, no, that because of this 5-year clock, you can't really do that. So let's walk through this. When you apply for Medicaid benefits on the application, which is called the PA 600, there's a question that asks, have you given anything away in the last 60 months greater than $500? Okay. If the answer to that is no, we don't have a problem. If the answer to that is yes, we may have a problem, right? And if you have transferred assets for less than fair market value, which, the common speak would be a gift, you didn't receive fair value when you transferred to the other person, you gave it to them. If you've made a gift, now you've got an eligibility problem. So simple math, these are not the actual numbers, but we'll just give ourselves some simple math. Let's say somebody gave away $140,000. What Medicaid is going to do is they're going to divide the amount of the gift, $140,000, by the monthly cost of a nursing home, which is about 14 grand. Right? So if we divide $140,000 by $14,000, the answer is 10 months, right? Because that was the monthly cost of care. $14,000 is the monthly cost of care. So if we divide $140,000 by $14,000, our answer is 10 months. For the next 10 months, the person is not eligible for Medicaid. This is called a penalty period. The length of the penalty period is determined by the value of the stuff that was given away in the last 5 years. Okay. Now, that's all it is. That's how the rules work. It's not illegal to give your stuff to family members. Nobody's going to jail if you give your stuff to family members or to a trust. It's just you're not eligible for Medicaid for a while. Okay, that's the ramification. Now, that could be a very bad ramification. This is where families get themselves in trouble, because where a family gets themselves in trouble is I give all my stuff to my kid. Okay. And then something happens in my kid's world. My kid dies before me. My kid goes through a divorce. My kid's in an accident. My kid gets laid off. My kid starts drinking. My kid spends the money. My kid goes on vacation too many times. Like you could go down this road of the kid receives the money and spends it or loses it to circumstances beyond his or her control. Right. Okay. Well, then what happens if dad goes into the nursing home in the next 5 years? We have a serious problem, right? Because now dad's out of money because he gave it to the kid, but the money's gone. Then dad needs to apply for Medicaid, but Medicaid denies coverage because the money's gone. All right. So we can't get it back. We're now denied eligibility for Medicaid benefits, and the nursing home is not getting paid. And the worst day is the first day that the nursing home is not being paid, because now they have to start taking action. They cannot provide everybody in there $10,000 a month in services and not get paid for it. No business could withstand that. It doesn't matter if they're in healthcare, in the car industry, or professional services. You can't take a $10,000 loss per client per month. It doesn't work, right? And so this is a problem, and they start threatening discharges, and now all of a sudden the nursing home is the bad guy. But the reality is this government system that requires you to go broke is the bad guy, right? All right. Well, that's ugly, and we don't want that to happen. So how do we not let that happen in our families? How do we protect assets without going broke and without taking on all this risk? Okay, well, one of the things to understand is that the money could be given back, right? The Pennsylvania will allow you to do a cure of the gift. So let's say $140,000 was given away and we're able to get it back. Now it's like it never happened. But the problem is, I have ran into very few circumstances where kids that received a gift are in a position to give it back. Okay. Dozens of reasons why that might be true. Kid has his own health care issues. Kid goes to a divorce. Kid dies before me. If I give my daughter my house and then my daughter dies before me and leaves her house to her husband, am I getting that back? What happens when that husband remarries? What happens if my kid gets sued? What happens if my kid is in an accident? What happens if my kid becomes disabled? What happens if my kid's kid, my grandkid, goes through any of that? Are the parents going to be in a financial position to give the money back? And so transferring assets to the kids, let alone the fact it's usually a giant tax mistake, is risky because we've given up control of the money. We've given up control of the house. And what we've done is we've multiplied our problems, because what we were trying to do was transfer the house for me to protect it from my potential future problem, the need for the nursing home. And what I've done now is I have given it to my kid and I have subjected the house not only to my problem, because we got this 5-year clock, because my problems don't go away for a while. But now I've still got my problems. And now I also have subjected the value of the house to my kid's problem. And I've multiplied the things that can go wrong here, right? No good, no bueno. We don't want to do that. We're not in the business to cause our clients more problems. And so be very, very careful with this idea that I can give my stuff to my kid, because time and time again, it doesn't work well. Okay. All right. And this is the stuff that we teach you if you come to one of our upcoming webinars or workshops. You can go to sechlerlawfirm.com and you can find our webinars and our workshops. And it's about an hour and 15 minutes of how to set yourself up appropriately so that we avoid issues like this. And so if you need to do some estate planning, and if you're listening to this radio show, you need to do some estate planning, then I suggest that the first step is education. Educated decisions are typically better decisions. And in my law firm, I've never believed in charging people for the education. So please come to one of our free workshops. We're going to teach you all this stuff, and give you a ton of education before we ask you to make a decision if you'd like to hire the firm. So come check out the workshop. We get super high marks on this thing. People enjoy the heck out of it. We try to make it fun. We try to make it light. We're not boring presenters. It's a good use of your evening or afternoon. So come check it out. But back to the thing, right? So how do we defeat the 5-year clock? Well, we could plan 5 years ahead, right? I mean, that's one of the things that people are trying to do when they give their house to their kid is, I'm going to give my house to my kid and then I'm not going to get sick for 5 years. But then something happens and we have a stroke and we got a problem, or the disease progresses faster than we thought it would. Now we have a problem, right? Well, the problem is because we can't get it back, right? Because we subjected the house or the money to the kids' issues. When we are doing 5-year planning, we call this pre-planning for long-term care. And this is almost standard course practice when we're dealing with middle-class retirees who are just want to protect their stuff, have a nice retirement, and get the leftovers to the kids. It's almost a standard course practice in our office that we're going to use what's called an asset protection trust to hold some stuff. It might hold the house, it might hold the money, it might hold some of the money, right? But not all of the money. All right, so we put in and consider it the rainy day fund, right? Like I like to simplify things when we're telling stories and explaining this for our clients. So let's say, you divide your net worth into what we'll call the walking around money. This is the money that you use: checking account, savings account, sources of income like Social Security, retirement distributions, right? So the walking around money. And then most families also have the rainy day fund, right? It could be home equity in a lot of families, could be a life insurance policy, could be an investment account that we actually haven't tapped into in 15 years. We just have it, right? So that's the rainy day fund. All right. Well, a lot of the time we like to take the rainy day fund or a portion of the rainy day fund and put it into an asset protection trust, because then after 5 years, if I have dementia, they can't get to the stuff. It just makes perfect sense. But here's the best part about using a trust is, one, it's not a tax mistake, right? Giving the stuff to the kids can be a giant tax mistake. Using the trust is not a tax mistake, but also we don't subject the assets to the kids' potential issues. the house, the money for the next 5 years or for the rest of my life for that matter, is not subject to my kid's divorce. It's not subject to my kid passing away before me. It's not subject to my kid getting sued for red car hits blue car, right? The assets are in the trust. They're safe. We've started the 5-year clock, but I have not multiplied my problems and created my risk and created tax problems. So we really like to use an asset protection trust. Okay. Now, what happens if we create an asset protection trust and we don't make it 5 years? All right. So, well, let's deal with the far end of that. Okay. So remember, we've got walking around money that you're still using the same way you always used, and we're holding the walking around money, home equity, in an asset protection trust. And I almost make it. You know what? I get to month 58. I almost made it the 5-year clock. Right. So do we have a problem? Well, no, not really, because we didn't make it to 5 years, but we didn't put all the money in the trust in the first place. Remember, we left the walking around money out. And so what we're going to do is just use the walking around money to pay the nursing home for month 59 and month 60, right? And now we're past the 5-year clock. And now we can apply for Medicaid benefits, because remember, the Medicaid application only asks if you've given anything away in the last 60 months. The answer in that scenario would be, well, no, we gave it away 61 months ago. They're only allowed to ask you about 60 months. They're not really allowed to ask you about 61 months. And so at some point in time, we take the rainy day fund, we put in the asset protection trust, we leave the walking around money out. Your life is the same because you didn't give up access to the money you're actually using. But if you do get sick later, we protected the stuff from in the trust. If you can make it 5 years before that need for care, which we hope you never need to care, but if you make it 5 years, you protect all the stuff, right? That's in the trust. If we make it 58 months, do we have a problem? No, we're gonna pay with the walking around money for a couple of months, right? So we don't have a problem, and now we've protected stuff. So that's how it would work. It would work on the far end of the 5-year clock. Okay, so now let's bring it back close, right? Let's say I meet with a client and they come to one of our workshops and they learn about this type of planning, and we teach them about the asset protection trust, and they say, boy, that seems like a good idea, which, by the way, will probably be your experience. You'll probably say, boy, that sounds like a good idea, because it is. And now we have some stuff in a trust, but unfortunately, it doesn't work out so well for this family. The client has a stroke in the first 3 months of owning the trust. Okay. Well, that didn't work. We didn't get anywhere near the 5-year clock. So now where are we? Are we up the creek without a paddle? Well, no, we're not, because even though this is an irrevocable trust, which this word scares people, here's how this works. The healthy spouse or the adult child who's involved calls us. We have a family meeting and we say, look, your mom tried to protect assets. Okay. She was concerned about what would happen if she got sick. She had no idea she was going to get sick in 3 months, but she was concerned about what would happen with the money if she got sick. And so we put some planning in place to try to protect assets. Unfortunately, as you know, it didn't work out because your mom had this untimely thing. But here's the thing. We can terminate this trust. All we need is beneficiary consent. Kids, you guys are the beneficiaries. With your signature, the trust goes away. The stuff goes back to mom. We cure the gift for Medicaid purposes. And we then can commence doing what we call nursing home crisis planning, right? So nursing home crisis planning is another option where we can do lots of planning even after someone is in a nursing home. And it's not, we lawyers cannot promise results, but it is not uncommon to protect half this stuff, sometimes a lot more than that, even after someone is in a nursing home, right? So, okay. All right. Well, then let's do that. So then the family could consent to a termination of the trust, which they're under no obligation to do, but they're allowed to do. So now the trust is terminated. And then we commence doing Medicaid crisis planning and maybe protect half the stuff anyway, right? And so plan A, plan B. It's actually probably plan B and plan C, because plan A is never go to a nursing home. I don't think anybody is looking forward to those days, right? Plan A is never go to a nursing home. Plan B is recognizing the fact that nursing homes are full of people that were never going to nursing homes, is we probably ought to start a 5-year plan And plan C, if we don't make it 5 years, we do Medicaid crisis planning. But the point is, there's always an opportunity. If we plan well and we don't take on unnecessary risk and we don't make tax mistakes and we don't give up all the control of everything we own, and there's a way to work through this process. But you have to get educated first, right? I mean, in a show like this, I can't give you all the rules. I'm afraid people would go out and make mistakes, which brings me to like my warning for you is this show is for your education. The show is not legal advice. So all the things I just described, do not try to do those on your own. You will make a mistake. It's complicated stuff. But the point is you should be working with people who understand this stuff. I was recently talking to a very well-respected attorney in Pittsburgh. This person does lots of good estate planning for families, but he does good estate planning for families with lots and lots of money. And so he has a wonderful reputation in the community of people that have lots and lots of money to be a guy you might want to work with, right? The problem is that and I think people that are similarly situated, he doesn't know anything about long-term care or helping middle-class families. Like they just don't understand this stuff. It's just not part of the philosophy of where most of their clients are, right? And so he was referring us a case, and I thanked him for the case, and we proceeded to help the family. But the point is, if you're listening to this or you listen to any of the other content that we put out, and you're thinking, nobody's ever told me this before, my lawyer didn't say anything about that, consider the possibility that maybe your lawyer doesn't know anything about this stuff. And you just didn't get the education you needed, right? And so I'd like to again invite you to come to one of our upcoming workshops. It's called 3 Secrets to Protect Your Family. And during that workshop, you learn all about the long-term care system. You learn about some tax stuff. You learn about asset protection trust. You learn about the Medicaid system. Like you learn about these very real things that middle-class and upper-middle-class families in retirement years need to know about. You need to know about that. You cannot ostrich and put your head in the sand with this. It's too important. Remember from the very beginning of the show, the thing everybody wants to do is I want to enjoy my retirement. I've got some stuff. I think that stuff coupled with my income can support me through retirement. But when I pass away, I want my stuff to get to my kids without any undue headache, taxes, expenses, or loss. But the only thing that's going to get in my way for a lot of families, the only thing that's going to get in your way is what happens if you and or your spouse, if you're married, get sick. Because if you get sick and you need in-home care, that could be super expensive, or if you need nursing home care, which can be super expensive, that could get in the way of this 50-year dream you've had about what your retirement is going to look like. And it's gonna. If one of you gets sick, of course it's going to impact your retirement. But this stuff impacts people in a couple of different ways. One, there's a care component. I need care that I didn't used to need to. There's a social component. There's no way that two spouses look at each other the same and have the same relationship and communication when one of them has dementia. There's a social impact here, which is a happiness impact because we're not going to have that retirement that we thought about. But there's also a financial element here. Unfortunately, in this country, Medicare doesn't pay for long-term care. If I need long-term care, which many of us will, most of us will, I'm on my own financially. And if I get sick, let's say I'm 70 when I get sick, if I have dementia. If I'm 70 when I get sick, my wife would only be 70, and she may live another 25 years. So how can I take a financial hit that's going to take away our life savings if she's supposed to live a couple of more decades? Where does that leave her? And I'm not, as her spouse, willing to take that risk. I'm going to protect some stuff so that my wife is not broke if I need long-term care. And that, to me, is just the way estate planning should go, right? That's our philosophy. That's what we teach our clients. It's not just about getting the stuff, who gets the stuff when you pass away. That's easy. The hard part is, how do we make sure that there is still some stuff? How do we get the care we need without going broke and protect the leftovers so that actually I can leave this financial legacy to my kids? And if that's important to you, You can't do that with a simple will and a power of attorney. It doesn't do that. It's the wrong tool. So I hope you learned something in today's episode. I hope you come to one of our upcoming 3 Secrets to Protect Your Legacy workshops. Go to sechlerlawfirm.com, Sechler lawfirm.com, and register for one of the free workshops. Remember, folks, this show is for your education. We got into some technical stuff today. I hope you learned a lot. But please do not make any decisions based on this or any other radio show. This is not legal advice. I don't know anything about your situation to tell you exactly what you should do. The point of this show is to tell you that there are some tools you should learn more about. You'll learn more about them at our 3 Secrets workshop. So thanks for listening to today's episode. I hope you learned a lot. Have a great week.